So, the Oculus Quest 2, or Facebook Quest 2 is what it really is these days, with Oculus not actually existing anymore. Now, whilst this is primarily going to be a sim racers review, I am going to go through all the things that anybody buying a VR headset would want to know about a VR headset. So if you're just here for the sim racing sort of viewpoint of it, perhaps skip a little way in. If not, just stick with us. It ain't going to be terribly long anyway. But I'm just going to go through everything you'd need to know as if it was any other VR headset you're going to buy. So first and foremost, VR headsets need to be comfortable because you've got to wear them on your face, you know, for extended periods of time, quite potentially. So is the Quest 2 comfortable? And this is subjective a little bit because everyone's head and face is a different shape, a different size. So, you know, you can't have a one size fits all scenario and it be perfect for everybody. So I have a couple of things that don't quite sit comfortably for me and a few things that are just fine. So primarily, I would say it is a comfortable headset. It isn't too heavy. I have no issue with the weight being at the front and no counterbalance being at the back. It doesn't bother me at all. The weight mostly rests on the top of your forehead there, at least with the strap being done up the way I do it. So I don't have a problem with the weight, and it is mostly comfortable. Talking about the strap, some people say it cuts in at the top of their ears, and again, you can see on some videos it definitely does. And for me, it could cut into the top of my ears, but I found it just as easy to put the strap just on the outside of my ears there. So it just sort of ever so slightly, just, you know, almost tucking your ears in behind the strap. And that worked just fine for me. It wasn't uncomfortable. It doesn't actually squash your ears against the side of your head. For me, there's almost like a natural gap between the strap at that point. Maybe my head narrows in where my ears are, I don't know. But for me, putting the strap or tucking my ears under the strap seemed to work just fine, and I had no issues with it digging in whatsoever. Because you want to get this back section sort of as low, you know, past that bulge on the back of your head as possible, really, to stop it sliding down your face, which some people have experienced. But yeah, I don't actually mind the strap. Some people say the Elite strap's an essential purchase. I think it's just going to depend on the shape of your head, because for me, it's not an essential purchase, and I don't think I'll be buying one. But for some people, maybe it will be. The only issue I do have is this adjuster here. I find in aggressive games where you're moving about a lot, sometimes it can work its way a little loose. And the best way for that to not happen is to actually pull it a little bit tighter than perhaps you would do naturally. And by pulling it tighter, there is more friction at the points where there is supposed to be friction, which is what would stop it working its way loose. So if you experience it coming loose and slipping down the front of your face, just try pulling it a little bit tighter, perhaps. For me, that worked. So yeah, the strap I don't have a problem with. That works pretty much fine for me. The facial interface itself, you know, the foam section around here, that sits nicely on my face without any comfort issues, but I do get light leakage around the bottom here. You know, some of them have, other facial interfaces have like almost flappy bits, for want of a better choice of words, that are in here that will sit over the nose and close any light leakage. This doesn't, it's just, you know, you can see it's just open there. So I get light leakage in from underneath, and no matter where I situate it on my face, I always get a little bit of light leakage. Again, this is face shape and head shape dependent. So for me, a bit of light leakage. My biggest gripe is that my nose hits the inside of the lenses here. Now, if I raise it up a little bit, it doesn't do it so much, but you know, the height you have it on your face, sort of talking up and down, is determined by where the sweet spot is in relation to your eyes. You put it where it's at its clearest, and wherever that is, or wherever it happens to be. So you can't just say, oh, it's all right, I'll move it up a little bit, because then you might have a blurry experience. So it needs to sit where it needs to sit. For me, the lenses in position 2, which is perfect for my IPD, they rest ever so slightly on my nose sometimes. You can see slightly oily marks from my skin on the inside there where that's happened, and the little sort of recess there as well touches my nose. So that's a bit of a bummer, but I may try an aftermarket facial interface, maybe from VR Cover. They're bound to release one fairly soon if they haven't already by the time I'm making this video. That will probably cure those issues, although again, nose touching the lenses have to sit where they have to sit. So whilst VR Cover may do a facial interface that has those flappy bits I mentioned that will sit between the lenses and my nose, I think it's still going to touch it, you know, ever so slightly, because that's where they need to sit for me to get that perfectly clear image. Anything else to mention comfort wise? No, not really. It's not too heavy. The strap works just fine for me. The facial interface is comfortable, but my nose does touch the lenses and I do get light leakage. So yeah, that's pretty much it from a comfort point of view. I suppose you could talk about the controllers from a comfort point of view. The controllers are very comfortable. I actually really like these controllers. They feel just like my old CV1 controllers, but a little bigger in my hand, which is great. So if you like those, you'll like these. They're an improvement on the Quest 1 and the Rift S controllers. The battery covers don't slide off like they do on those in games like Beat Saber, where you're being a bit frantic, and they are a bit chunkier in the hand. So yeah, you won't have any problems with the controllers. Again, I'm covering all aspects of the headset here. Sim racers won't be using the controllers anyway, if you're thinking about buying it just for sim racing. But if you're not and you're here for just a generic review and my opinion on it, then you want to know about these, and these are good. And they take one AA battery and they've doubled the battery life somehow. So Facebook have done a marvellous job with that as far as I'm concerned. So what else we got? Yeah, we've done the comfort. So sound, obviously these have, and I want to use the word crap, because if you're into your audio in any way, shape or form, then the sound on this is crap, just like it was crap on the Quest 1 and just like it was crap on the Rift S. If you don't think it's crap, it's just because you're not into audio perhaps as much as what I am. I mean, if you look behind me, you can see some old late 80s, early 90s Yarmo speakers in the background there. They're childhood sort of memories for me, but I'm big into my audio, whether it's home theatre, whether it's just listening to music, whether it's playing VR or playing computer games in general. I must have surround sound, I must have a sub, I must have good dynamic range. And the speakers in this, the Rift S and the original Quest, obviously can't provide much in the way of dynamic range. They are a tiny little speaker with a tiny little outlet. They're not powerful, so they're not loud. They produce no low end pretty much. They probably bottom out at 100 hertz, something ridiculously high like that. They are clear, there's no issue with clarity. So your mid-range and your treble's plenty clear enough. It's just not very loud, not very immersive, and there's no bass. But that's what we expect with this type of audio solution, and it's been done to hit that price point that they wanted to hit. So we buy it knowing this. It's not a problem. If you want to use this as a VR headset and you're not into your audio like I am, you probably won't care. And if you do, then you can get yourself a set of headphones with a short cable, and you can just plug those into your 3.5mm jack and put your headphones on, volume controls on the bottom, and you're sorted. There's no problem whatsoever. Or if you're a sim racer and you're going to be sat static in your rig, you can use whatever audio system you've got in your room anyway, and you don't have to worry about it, because they don't sit on your ears, they don't cover your ears up, so using whatever audio solution you've got in the room works just fine. So yeah, it's not a gripe. It's something we all knew. It was going to be poor. It is poor. It's as expected. We're paying 299 quid. So let's not grumble too much. So that's the sound. And so I suppose now the most important thing of all, maybe second only to comfort, is the screen. Having a good screen is great, but if it feels uncomfortable when you can't wear it, it probably is secondary. So yes, the screen. The screen is lovely. The image is super crisp, super clear. The colours are vibrant. There's plenty of brightness, and the blacks are acceptable for an LCD panel. They're not OLED quality blacks, they're not going to be, but they're more than acceptable. So you'll have absolutely no complaints about the visuals whatsoever. Now this, I'm talking specifically about the native Quest 2 games and programs. We'll get onto the Oculus Link cable and virtual desktop a little bit later on. So native stuff looks absolutely beautiful. You know, it's running at the full resolution of the headset. There's no compression. It all looks great. Screen door effect, it's there if you choose to look for it on very light coloured text or backgrounds, but if you don't choose to look for it, you can't see it. So it's a big leap up, even from the Rift S, you know, and obviously the first gen headsets, it's leaps and bounds. I put my CV1 on after using this and it was just like, wow, the difference was just unbelievable. It really was. I was blown away how far things have come, you know, and even from the Rift S, which is a step up over the CV1, this is still much, much better. I would also say, referencing the Rift S, the sweet spot on this is a little bigger than what it is on the Rift S. It's not as big as the CV1, mind you, and I go back and forth between Rift S and CV1 mentally, because the Rift S isn't, it's not an upgrade in many ways over the CV1, and a lot of times I end up using the CV1 because I prefer the inbuilt audio, because I prefer the sweet spot being so much larger, and a few other things as well. Comfort, I prefer the way it fits on my face. But yeah, the sweet spot in this is bigger than the Rift S, I would say, at least to my eyes. Not as big as the CV1. So if you're used to something with a large sweet spot, you know, when you move your eyes and look around, it goes blurry very quickly when you're not looking straight forward. Yeah, sweet spot, if you're not familiar, is how far you can move your eyes off center, so moving around looking with your eyes versus moving your head, and it stay in focus. Now the Reverb G2 that I've got coming is supposed to have a massive sweet spot, so I'm looking forward to trying that. This is perfectly acceptable. I'd say it's better than the Rift S, but not quite as good as the CV1 as a comparator. What else would we say about the visuals? That's probably it, really, as far as the visuals go. They're great. You know, that extra resolution is a big step up. The lesser screen door effect, almost unnoticeable, is great. The blacks are acceptable, colours, brightness, all good, and a good enough sweet spot as well. The IPD adjustment, whilst it has 3 predetermined positions, 1, 2 and 3, as you may have seen in other people's videos, you can actually adjust them so they'll sit just in between those as well. So should you happen to be an in-betweener, you're not quite number 1, number 2 or number 3, I've forgotten what the actual values are. I think it's something like 58, 64 and 68, something like that millimeters. Don't quote me on it. But if you're in between whatever the preset ones are, you can actually get the lenses to sit in between if it makes enough of a difference to you. I'm lucky my IPD is exactly what number 2 is, which is either 63 or 65, I can't quite remember now. But yes, the visuals are really good. You will not be disappointed with the visuals. I suppose we should talk about tracking, really. Tracking's spot on. There's, you know, the Rift S, after it got a few updates, tracking was great with that. The Quest 1, tracking was great with that. Quest 2, tracking's also great. I've not had any issues. Certainly not when sim racing, because you're not using controllers, so that there's only got to track your head movements. So that's absolutely fine. You do need to have the room well illuminated for the cameras to work though, so don't try doing it in the dark. But yeah, tracking's all good. So, you know, so far so good. It's a decent headset, especially for £299. I've got the 64 gig version because I really want to use this more playing around with virtual desktop for wireless VR than I do as a standalone headset. That's really why I bought it, because I like playing around with things, tinkering with things, you know, gadgets and new technology and whatnot. So that's really why I bought this. So yeah, 64 gig version. I'm losing my thread now. So yeah, what else we've got to talk about? So we've done that with the controllers. Okay, so really it's now about the sim racing experience, because this is, you know, this is the whole point of this video from a sim racer's perspective. Now, oh yeah, battery life, couple of hours, 2 to 2.5 hours. But yeah, from a sim racer's point of view, this is a really tricky one. If you are buying this, or if you're considering a VR headset just for sim racing, you don't need a wireless headset, because you're going to be sat stationary in your racing cockpit. So having a wireless headset is neither here nor there. Now this is obviously the cheapest VR headset you can buy on the market right now. So even though you don't need a wireless one, you might be considering it just because it's super affordable. I suppose the next most affordable one would be a Rift S. Yeah, it would be, which is a wired headset. So that's probably the nearest thing to compare it to from a purely sim racing point of view. Again, controllers don't matter when it comes to that. And nor does it being wireless. So, my experience is using it for sim racing. Firstly, let's talk about the Oculus Link, plugging it in with a USB cable. Latency, no real issue. Didn't notice any input lag that I could tell. So that was absolutely fine. It worked without any problems. I didn't have any issues there at all. But visually, yes, you can notice the image is compressed. Now, it's going to be a matter of personal opinion as to whether you think it's acceptable or not. For me, it isn't acceptable because I have a wired headset here and I'm going to have the G2 coming soon too. And seeing the compression, it almost looks like it's rendering it at a lower resolution. Straight lines are not straight, they're jagged. More so in the distance than up close, but you know, switching from a PC VR headset, even my CV1, switching from that to this, the CV1 is, because it isn't compressed, is at least pixel for pixel accurate, whereas this being compressed, you do notice the difference, and that's with the Link cable. Again, if you're thinking £299 and I can plug it in and I can use it versus buying a Rift S, I haven't actually checked the retail of a Rift S because they are still making them or selling them until next year sometime. They were £400. So you would have thought they brought them down a little bit, being as you can buy one of these for £299. But I haven't looked. But that's really the nearest choice. And if I was buying one purely for sim racing, I would, purely for sim racing, I would probably still go with a wired headset because I don't like seeing that visual compression that's there. It's just not, I don't have to see it because you can plug a headset in designed to be plugged in and it's not there, so I don't want it. And that's with the Link cable. If we then go to virtual desktop, which for anyone that doesn't know is software that allows you to connect this to your PC wirelessly and stream your PC VR games, the experience gets just a little bit worse from a sim racing point of view again. So the visuals are noticeably more compressed and potentially even at a slightly lower resolution. I haven't actually looked into the specifics of how virtual desktop compresses the image, whether it does render it at a lower resolution or not, I'm not sure, but it looks like it's at a lower resolution and it is noticeably more compressed. Now, what's really interesting about virtual desktop and about the Link cable, in fact, is that some games look almost indistinguishable between wired, as in proper PC VR wired headset, and going over Link or virtual desktop. And others look terrible. So, as an example, Zero Caliber, which is a PC VR game, and Half-Life Alyx, both PC VR games, they actually looked really good, both over Oculus Link cable and over virtual desktop. And if I was to choose to play either of those, I would probably play them wirelessly over virtual desktop on my Quest, because I could hardly notice a difference in the visual fidelity. The compression, I was looking at things in detail up close, specifically trying to compare this stuff, and I really couldn't tell much of a difference. And that was really encouraging. And to begin with, I thought, bloody hell, this is I don't need a wired headset anymore. But then when I started sim racing, so it got noticeably worse. So Dirt Rally, for example, was awful. And what else did I play? I played Star Wars Squadrons. Obviously, it's not a sim racing game, but it's a fast-paced game where there's lots changing visually. And this is where compression algorithms struggle. The more that changes frame to frame, the harder it is to compress efficiently and retain detail. So when I was playing things like first-person shooters like Zero Caliber, Half-Life Alyx, because you're moving at a walking pace, things aren't changing that much. You know, and also you've got repetitive textures, floor tiles, wall textures, window. They're very similar from a compression point of view. You flick over to Dirt Rally, where you're belting down a rally stage at 80 miles an hour, trees, bushes, shrubs, up, down, road texture changes, fences, gates, lighting changes. There's a lot changing at once, and this is what compression struggles with. So that looked awful. I would never ever play Dirt Rally using virtual desktop, and I would never do it using the link cable either, because it just looked horrible. And I'm being harsh, but I'm trying to be accurate, because those of us that have got high-end PCs and, you know, decent displays and what have you, we want to see the best we can see. So I'm being completely blunt here. I just wouldn't play it that way. I would put a wired PC VR headset on and I would use that instead. But as I say, for non-sim racing use, virtual desktop worked really well in both those first-person shooters I played. Again, Star Wars Squadrons, no, that didn't look good either. Again, blacks are quite hard to compress, and when you're in space with nothing but spaceships and stars and mostly a black blanket of sky, it's obviously going to struggle a little bit. So yeah, it's an interesting one. So again, going back to sim racing, which is why, you know, I'm making this video primarily, I would still stick with my first video that I speculated about this for sim racing use, you know, a few weeks ago. I still stick by what I said there, and say, given the choice, no, I wouldn't choose this as a dedicated sim racing virtual reality headset. I think I would still choose, well, I would still choose a Rift S if I could get one at a similar price to this, or even a fraction more, because I want a nice clear display. Even though the resolution's higher on this natively, even though the screen door effect is less than what it is on the Rift S. The Rift S is still pretty good from a screen door effect point of view. And at the moment as well, this only runs at 72 Hertz. Rift S runs at 80. It's not much more, but it's a little more. But I would still choose, I think, the Rift S over this, purely for sim racing. Obviously, if you want to use it for other VR titles, then, you know, that's a different story. I would probably... It's tricky, because for first-person shooters, I'd say I'd choose this and go virtual desktop. But then I'm a sim racer as well. And so I'd be like, but my sim racing games are crap. So yeah, it's such a tricky one. We'll divide it. Sim racing, don't buy it if you have a choice. If you can only afford $299, you haven't got a choice. Go buy a Quest 2 and use that. If you want to use your VR headset for other things aside from sim racing, you know, maybe sim racing you do a little bit of, then yes, it's a great headset and I would recommend it. Going back to virtual desktop, people's experiences, and the link cable as well, people's experiences, a bit like face shape and head size, are going to vary massively here, depending on what spec your PC is, because having a fast PC makes a huge difference when it comes to the quality of the experience you get with the link cable and with virtual desktop. Now, I've got a Ryzen 3700X, 8-core 16-thread, I have 32 gig of RAM, and I have an RTX 2080, and I'm using 2 NVMe drives. So everything's pretty quick, which means I'm going to get the best possible experience I can. As far as wireless connectivity goes using virtual desktop, my router is like just across the back of the room there. And if you turn off all other Wi-Fi connections to it, i.e. your mobile phones, Nintendo Switch, iPad, laptop, whatever you may have, because they make a huge difference. You must have those off and only connect your Quest if you're going to go virtual desktop. Or as other people have done, get another router or a wireless access point that's 5 gigahertz or Wi-Fi 6, and have that dedicated just for the Quest 2. And that will get you best experience. I see a latency in virtual desktop of between 19 and 22 milliseconds. And I think from what I've seen on the internet, that's about as good as anyone can expect. And I don't really notice that latency whilst playing first-person shooters, or even Beat Saber. I'm not the best Beat Saber player, so maybe if you're more advanced, you might notice it. But that was a pretty good experience for me. But yeah, sim racing, the link cable, virtual desktop, the experience just isn't good enough for me. There's too many compromises visually, and I would choose a wired PC VR headset. Probably repeating myself. If you need it for other things, it's a great headset. I'd absolutely recommend it to anybody. But just for sim racing, no, I'd choose something else. So that is my sim races review of the Facebook Oculus Quest 2. I hope you've all found it helpful. Any questions, by all means, stick them in the comments. If I've missed anything, you know, ask away, and I'll try my best to answer those questions too. So, and sorry for a delay in getting this out. I was trying to get it out Friday, but I had ball ache getting virtual desktop to work properly. But, you know, it's not officially supported, so things take a little bit of dicking around. But yeah, sorry about the hold up. Today is Monday, so yeah, a couple of days late. Anyway, I would normally say thanks for watching, have a great weekend, but it's Monday. So thanks for watching and have a great week. I will see you all soon.